Hi, everyone. I see we have some attendees joining. We're going to wait until 1 minute past to kick everything off. Hello, everybody. My name is Beth Meyer, and we're excited to welcome you to Novata's webinar, Navigating and Mastering CSRD Compliance. Novata very recently launched our game-changing CSRD tool, and we're very lucky to have a large number of in-house experts on what is quite a difficult and groundbreaking regulation. So our hope today is to walk you through it in a way that really helps you to be in a practical and empowered position to take action and hopefully answer all your questions. So if you do have any questions, we encourage you to ask them. Please put them in the chat, and we'll reserve time at the end to go through those. You also can go light on the notes because we will share these slides with you after today's webinar. We're going to move through over to introductions. I mentioned earlier, my name is Beth Meyer. I'm Chief Legal Officer and Head of Risk and Compliance at Novata. I'm very lucky that in addition to running our legal team, I run our metrics and regulations team, which is the sustainability experts behind the CSRD tool. So the team has read the regulation inside and out. We are friends of EFRAG, the regulator behind the regulation. We've worked really closely with them and understand the guidance backwards and forwards. And so we're here to help you and share our knowledge on that front. I'm excited to introduce to you my colleague, Laura Callaghan, who's also probably in the 0.001% globally of expertise in CSRD. So be prepared to learn a lot. I'll hand it over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. Good morning. As Beth said, I'm Laura Callaghan. I lead the EMEA side of our advisory business at Novata. I know at Novata, many of you are familiar with the technology side of the business, but we do also have an advisory arm, and that is where I sit. We are going to be walking you through a very tight agenda today, hopefully not too overwhelming for all of you, but very informative. We're going to be focusing first on the CSRD. What is it? Who is it impacting? What are the potential penalties? But also, what are the benefits to it? I know often when it comes to a regulation, it can often feel like a tick box exercise for some, but we at Novata really do see the value in aligning to this regulation. And so we're going to walk you through the benefits as well as some of the penalties and risks for non-compliance too. We're going to walk through the double materiality assessment. This is one of the key parts of the process of how you comply with the CSRD. And we're also going to be touching on the data points. So what does it mean once you've done your double materiality assessment, or what do you have to do when you're at that point of collecting the data? And then lastly, we're going to be showing you our CSRD solution. So I will give you an overview of what that looks like, what you can do in there, and also walk you through some of the core aspects of that. Please do ask any questions in the chat box, as Beth said. So let's kick off. So what is the CSRD? Yes, another acronym that everybody has to navigate in the ESG space. This one stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It was introduced by the European Union and it was finalised in July last year, but it is impacting companies not just in the EU, but any that have a substantial presence within Europe. So this includes over 60,000 European and non-European companies, not to mention all of the companies that are part of those companies who are, for example, in the value chain or clients of those that may be required to provide information to help those companies that are needing to comply with the regulation. So it's a really, really far-reaching regulation, and it's really here to increase transparency. So it's acting as a way to standardize corporate reporting on sustainability matters. So just like investors, many of you who are on the line may already be responding to the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, the SFDR. The CSRD is very similar to the SFDR, except it's focused on the corporate side of things. So many of the data points that investors may already be collecting for the SFDR can actually be fed in from the CSRD. But it's also here to help key stakeholders evaluate the sustainability of companies, so the sustainable performance of companies, and also helping to elevate the importance of sustainability matters when it comes to investment decision making as well. It really is the first of its kind. It's one of the most ambitious regulations in the world. But at its heart, it is really just asking companies to better understand sustainability related impacts and report on them. It will support the standardization of corporate sustainability reporting, which also helps with more comparability. And ultimately, it really acts as a framework for companies to identify and assess impacts, risks, and opportunities of their business and their value chain. So let's talk about the penalties. Over to you, Beth.
Thank you, Laura. The CSRD, interestingly, is silent when it comes to penalties itself, the regulation. And what it says is that it allows the enforcement and description and scope of penalties up to each EU member state. And as each EU member state has transposed the CSRD into their national legislation, on a rolling basis, they've made clear what their penalties are. And it's rather stunning how severe some of the penalties are, especially when you compare it to slightly similar regulations like SFDR, where the penalties are significantly less severe. And to be clear, when it says non-compliance, a lot of the penalties will range in terms of this is what you get if you just fail to comply at all. If you don't report anything, this is what you get for an incomplete report, or this is what you get for inaccurate information. So most EU member states have imposed monetary fines. Some are quite significant, and some of them, again, going with inaccurate data, can be lodged against each inaccurate data point, which we'll go through later. There's a significant number of data points. And in some cases, the monetary fines can go up to 6% of the company assets, which is tremendous. Others take it from a liability angle, and in addition to monetary fines, they've imposed up to 5 years of imprisonment for officers and directors or other forms of liability, which is pretty severe. France uniquely, and I think others who have not yet announced what their penalties will be, may copycat the French legislation, but bans companies from public procurement processes or an involvement if they engage in noncompliance with the CSRD. Again, similar with the imprisonment, there's other things that include damages against individual board members, including those that did not provide oversight or did not get involved in the CSRD process itself. Most include public denunciation, so a listing on a governmental website and a list of people that have refused to comply with the CSRD. And these are the more legal aspect penalties and harms. I think the other side is that in practice, what happens, and there's a huge amount of reputational harm, lost opportunities. I mean, if anyone on the call, and I suspect almost everyone in here, has been through the diligence process related to receiving a financing or going through an acquisition, you need to disclose when you have not been in compliance with the regulation or been subject to investigation. This would be one. And it's also a really hard one to justify because which we'll discuss later today in the webinar, while the process of complying with CSRD can be quite onerous, it's just a data collection process. So to say we just didn't have the time or resources to do this and we're willing to take on this degree of penalties and issues is a pretty hard justification to stand behind. And then I personally think one of the largest penalties and issues is the total lack of transparency. So the aim of this regulation, like Laura said earlier, is to increase transparency into how companies run themselves, how they interact with the communities around them, what their impact is on others and on the environment and on their own stakeholders. And to not disclose that invites cynicism and concern. So again, I think the penalties are quite severe, one from a legal aspect, but also from in practice and a reputation aspect. But the benefits, I think, are actually huge. And this is something that I wish, if I could shift anything on the CSRD, it would be the way that people are currently viewing it. I think right now, again, I think it's GDPR, right when people started hearing about that before it was fully enforced. It sounds like this incredibly hard thing that is being asked of companies, and how do you get behind this? And that's true, it is a lot, but there's a huge amount of upside by going through this process. One, you can't manage what you don't measure. And the CSRD is asking you to measure a huge amount of data that is very relevant to how your company operates and how it interacts with others. That could be a tremendous benefit to you. You get a lot of insights into growth. So where are areas that you're actually spending a huge amount of resources that you could very easily tweak to reduce your costs or increase your opportunities? You'll find areas that perhaps your emissions are a lot less significant than you assumed. That might be a great opportunity for you to make public commitments or to use that in a marketing capacity. Operational efficiency and risk management, hands down, an incredible opportunity here. I spent a lot of my legal career working in compliance from the fund perspective. And the more that you have to do a fulsome exercise of which policies do you have, which policies do you not have, which one of them are accompanied by training, how often are those attended, what sort of responses and issues of non-compliance do you get for your own internal governance structures? Hugely beneficial to find out where your own risk landscape needs help and support. That's what the CSRD will offer you. Incredible stakeholder trust by being this transparent of opening the doors and showing everybody how your company impacts and what risks it faces. Long-term business resilience. If you go through a fulsome CSRD exercise, you will absolutely know the vulnerabilities of your company in a way that you did not know before, which gives you an opportunity to shore up those vulnerabilities and be in a better long-term position. Sustainability, supply chain management. I think employee engagement retention is huge. Laura, in a moment, will walk you through what a double materiality process entails, and it's mostly engagement with your stakeholders. You're going to need to reach out to your employees, discuss with them what's going well, what's not going well. As a result of this, people are going to know that you're listening to them, because not only do you absolutely by law need to listen to them for this, you're going to have to make a lot of those of their responses in a way public. Access to capital, increased investor confidence. The flip side of what I just discussed in the previous slide. This is showing that you are on top of everything, that you are in compliance. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a benefit is compliance itself. Tends to be a good idea to follow the law. And I think a benefit of following CSRD is an ability to say, we've taken on one of the hardest regulations currently facing companies of our size or scope, and we've been able to master that. So again, I think instead of viewing CSRD as a tick box exercise, like Laura mentioned earlier, that's going to make it painful the whole time. But if you go through this and say, we are going to find out so much about our company, and we're going to find ways to utilize this information, and we're going to involve all the relevant stakeholders, it's going to end up being a very different process and one that the company could benefit significantly from. Now over to Laura to walk through the different stages of CSRD.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, so I guess with the CSRD, we really are seeing a huge diversity in how companies are addressing the CSRD. We're seeing some clients that we work with right now who are already doing data collection. So they've done their double materiality assessment. They know what's material. They've engaged their stakeholders, and they're actually in the process of collecting a lot of the data that they may need to disclose. Whilst on the one hand, we're actually still having a lot of conversations with clients who haven't yet even understood their eligibility or their reporting boundaries. So I know this one may sound really obvious, but what I'm going to do here is talk you through 7 steps that we think are very important when it comes to aligning with the CSRD. And the first one is actually assessing the applicability. It sounds very, very obvious, but determining whether your company falls within the scope of CSRD can actually be really complex. There are 4 different ways in which your company could be required to report, varying from at the parent level through to subsidiary level. And it's really, really important that you engage your legal counsel or a third-party legal advisor to help you figure out when you need to report and how you need to report. So first, assess your applicability. Secondly, understand the requirements with specific reporting pieces. So, for example, the types of information that needs to be disclosed and the types of formatting that is required for reporting. The CSRD is really bringing a whole new horizon to what sustainability reporting was. We're very used to seeing lovely glossy reports, lots of photographs and narratives, whereas the CSRD is really stripping it back. It's trying to standardize it. It's trying to really emphasize the importance of having a data-driven approach to reporting. And so what they're bringing in are things like XBRL tagging, Everything must be machine readable. It's going to be a lot more bland and less colourful than sustainability reports before. But preparing yourselves for that and figuring out if you do still want to do a lovely glossy report, how could that be integrated, or how could you still get your core messaging and your storytelling across in a way that isn't going to defer too far away from what the CSRD is asking you to do. Another big thing is setting up governance, engaging with experts, and also educating your workforce. The CSRD is going to require communication and engagement with so many different stakeholders across your business, ranging from legal, compliance, finance, HR, operations, facilities management. I do not know a department in your company that will not be required to engage as part of the CSRD. So make sure everybody is up to speed with what it is, but not only what it is and why it's important, but also how they can help. A lot of these people are going to have the data that you're going to need to collect, and a lot of them will have first-hand experience with some of the risks and opportunities that you're going to be assessing. So it's really important everybody is up to speed on what the CSRD is all about. Number 4, we've been talking a lot about conducting a double materiality assessment, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail on that shortly. But this is really an exercise that will help you to identify the most relevant ESG issues for your company. And this is a mandatory part of the CSRD. You have to do a double materiality assessment. It's part of the process. And so making sure you're familiar with what this concept is going to be really, really important for you and your business. Developing processes for data collection and management is very important. So some companies may need to collect up to 1,200 data points. We are finding on average, based on clients that we're working with, they have between 350 and 650 metrics that they're having to collect. Some of the metrics are sector agnostic. They're essentially metrics that you have to collect regardless of the outcome of your double materiality assessment, whereas some of the metrics that you'll have to collect are specifically from the results of your double materiality assessment. So there are actually some data points you could start to collect now, even if you haven't done your double materiality assessment. And so making sure you have the processes and the governance set up to actually deal with this large data set is going to be really important too. When it comes to data collection, you may have some data points that are gathered as part of the double materiality assessment. What we really recommend is that companies do a pilot data collection. So I know a lot of you on this webinar right now are going to be reporting in 2026 on 2025 data. That doesn't mean that you have to wait to collect all of your 2025 data. We have a lot of clients that are working with us right now who are collecting 2024 data to use that as a baseline to understand where they may have gaps, but also where they may have some strengths so that they can start to integrate what they're finding from these data points into things like their broader strategy and their risk management processes. So it's never too soon to start collecting data. And then lastly, keep up to date with the regulation. Just like the SFDR and many other European regulations, this is one that is fast moving. It is consistently changing. And we do know that in 2026, there is sector specific guidance that is due to be published. So keep an eye out for that as and when that comes out. In terms of what we offer at Novata within my advisory team, I mentioned that we have clients that are at a huge scale of difference when it comes to where they are in their maturity and their understanding of the CSRD. So I did just want to touch on a couple of different pieces that we have available that we're working with various different clients on. The first is what we call ESRS readiness. So this is very much for companies who are completely new to the CSRD. They need support in educating the workforce. They need support in figuring out what gaps exist when it comes to their governance processes, their policies, etc. That's what ESRS readiness is all about. It's also about preparing companies for the double materiality assessment. A double materiality assessment can take anywhere from 2 months to a whole year, depending on the size of your company. On average, we see it takes around 3 months to complete. But that alone, in terms of the time and the resource that is needed to be put into that process alone, I think really demonstrates why it's important to make sure that your business and your stakeholders are really ready to actually undertake the double materiality assessment before diving straight into it. We offer two different options when it comes to double materiality. One is that we will do the full double materiality assessment for companies, including the stakeholder engagement, the training, the assessment, and also mapping the ESRS metrics that you'll need to collect. We do also offer a more flexible approach, which is where you as a company would do 90% of the work, but we as an advisory team would come in and analyse each of the different steps, run workshops with you, make sure that you are as prepared as you possibly can be when you're undertaking the assessment yourselves and following a digitised workflow that I'll be walking you through shortly in the platform. We do also offer EU Taxonomy assessment. So as part of the CSRD, you must do an EU Taxonomy assessment to understand the eligibility of your business when it comes to the EU Taxonomy, and also understand what proportion of your business is deemed to be sustainable under the EU Taxonomy framework. I feel like this is often something that's missed because you can be so heavily focused on the double materiality assessment, but please don't forget that as part of the CSRD, you also have to disclose what proportion of your business is aligned to the EU Taxonomy as well. And then lastly, if you are at that point of doing data collection and you're interested in doing a pilot data collection, we do also offer what we call a CSRD optimization offering. This is for businesses who are collecting the data and they want to figure out what gaps exist and how they can improve their internal processes. So we also support with that. We have a whole team of analysts and dedicated metrics and regulations team behind the scenes to help you along the way. So what about the double materiality assessment? I won't spend too long on this, but I'm just going to focus on two core elements. And that is that this is looking at it through an impact materiality lens and also a financial materiality lens. So for any companies that are maybe familiar with the GRI, you may be used to the impact side of things. And for any companies that are used to reporting on the TCFD, you may be used to the financial materiality side of things. Same with the SASB standards, that's financial materiality. The double materiality piece is really bringing these two lenses together. So you're looking at the impacts of the company on the people and planet, but you're also looking at the financial effects of people, planet, external factors, internal factors on the company. And that's all double materiality assessment is. Beth mentioned it involves a lot of stakeholder engagement. That is very true. It also involves a lot of research along the way, making sure that you're doing peer benchmarking exercises, doing desktop research, bringing in any scientific articles and things that you can to really support why you're finding things to be material or immaterial to your business. Our approach to double materiality follows the 4 steps that you will also see in the EFRAG guidance. So if you're not familiar with EFRAG or the guidance that's been published, in May this year, they published their final double materiality guidance. It is the holy grail to undertaking a double materiality assessment. So I definitely recommend that everybody reads that. And they have also since released various different pieces of FAQ documentation and a recent state of the play report, which states that companies that are undertaking a double materiality assessment, 85% of those are integrating the results of that into their strategy and risk management processes. So I hope that helps to really portray that this isn't just a tick box exercise. It's actually very, very useful. The 4 steps which we undertake, I'm going to be going through these in the demo, so I won't spend too much longer on this. But essentially, you can start to see here that we involve stakeholders. We look at your sustainability due diligence. We help to prioritise potential and actual impacts, risks and opportunities. We assess them. We help define the thresholds, what's low materiality versus high materiality. And we also help to identify those final lists of material topics and map the data points that you will need to collect as part of your disclosure. So, Beth, back to you to start talking through the data point side of things.
Thank you, Laura. So as Laura mentioned, once you've been through the double materiality process, that's going to inform and give you the information you need to map that to which of the over 1,100 ESRS data points you need to fulfill for your CSRD process. So ESRS is European Sustainability Reporting Standards. There's essentially the annex that goes with the CSRD legislation itself. And we keep mentioning EFRAG, that's the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. So they got together and said, we have this huge regulation, we need you to follow it. What are the actual data points? What are the reporting standards we need each company to follow in order to give us the data that is relevant and necessary and should be transparent to the public for this specific company in the sector that they operate in. So the ESRS is broken into several different groups. ESRS 1 is the general requirements. You won't find a prescribed data point in there. What that is really is kind of the instructions for how to navigate the ESRS process. So it will tell you need to go through a double materiality process. This is how you will take the results from that and translate that into your data points. It will also tell you there's a core set of data points that all companies must collect if they are subject to the CSRD, as Laura mentioned before. And that goes again with the main objective of the regulation itself. The point of this is to create standardization and transparency across all sectors regarding sustainability data. So these are things that it does not matter what sector you're in, what industry, how long you've been in operations, you're going to need to report on what your internal controls are regarding sustainability, what your governance structures are. You're going to need to report on your scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. So these are things that you could even kick off and do in parallel as you do your double materiality assessment. But then once you've done the double materiality assessment, you're going to go through, if we can go to the next slide, a very large number, 1,125 of these are ESRS data points that are organized by topic and select which you need to fulfill against. So under the environment, there's a number of data points related to climate change, pollution, biodiversity, water, lots. Social, similarly. And then lastly, in governance, it is less, but that's because the G is going to relate to all the ones that you've done on E and S, and more generally, the requirements we discussed that apply to everybody. Depending on the findings of your materiality assessment, often what we're seeing is companies are responding to between 400 and 600 sustainability reporting standards, which is a significant amount. If you're looking at a number more than that, if you're working consultant, and unfortunately we've heard this from a number of companies that have come to Novata after engaging a consultant that specializes in this, and they're saying, we're reporting close to 1,000 data points. That's likely too much. That might mean that there wasn't a mapping exercise done. It would be very odd for a company to be reporting against all of the ESRS. And I also, going back to this shouldn't be painful, this should be something that provides benefits. The intent of having this substantial of a scope of data points to collect against wasn't to bog down companies in this process. It was an attempt to say, let us refine this. These are the data points that we think are important, but let us refine it for you so you can focus on what is most relevant to you as an entity and in the industries that you operate in. Let's go to the next slide. Something critical that Novata has really wanted to do is to make this easy for everyone. So sustainability is never going to be as prolific and mainstream as we would all like it to be for long-term benefits of everyone, unless it's something that people can do and understand and feel empowered to navigate. So you'll see in the Novata platform, and I'm going to be very quick because we're running tight on time and Laura's going to share a helpful demo for you. But what we've done is we have all ESRS data points in our platform. We help you know which ones are the required, these are the mandatory, these are the ones that you'll have to fulfill no matter what the results of your DMA are. But we've also gone in and given you everything you need to make it easy. So we have the exact regulatory language, so there's no concern over non-compliance of misinterpreting what the data point needs to collect. But we've also worked very carefully with the regulators themselves and with all available guidance to give you in layman terms what this is actually asking for you. We connect for you with the related documents so that you know what's the context or the other things that might be provided by EFRAG here. And we've, again, tried to put all of that in an extremely upfront, user-friendly manner so that you can navigate this either with our help through the advisory services or solely on your own on the platform so that you know what you're collecting and you can make sense of it. We can go to the next slide. This is a more up-close look. So you'll see one of the data points is asking you for the disclosure of magnitude of anticipated financial effects in terms of margin erosion of business activities and material physical risk. That's a lot, right? You read that and it's like, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking me. And we understand that. So we go through and we say, okay, this is what it's actually asking you. And here's another way to look at it. And here's the other things that have been provided by EFRAG to help you understand what's being asked here. And here are examples. And if that's not enough, we have on-hand chat support to help walk you through this. So in the interest of time and without further ado, I'm going to let Laura walk you through the platform itself.
Thank you so much, Beth. So I'm firstly going to start off with the data points. So leading straight from what Beth has just spoken to, as she said, we have every single ESRS data point within the Novata platform. What you're seeing here is an example of one that a client may be collecting. And if we go into these data points, as Beth said, you can upload supporting documentation for data points. There's a substantial amount of guidance for each data point, including the sources of where you can find it within the directive. We have version control. So for example, if somebody is updating data points, you can keep an eye on this so you have an audit trail along the way. And also comments. So if you want to make sure that people are accountable for each data point, you can assign them and also keep track of any updates, comments, etc. that you may need to in the data point section. In terms of setting up your organization, we've also built in the functionality for you to decide how you want to collect the data. So as a company, if you're collecting it at the group level, you may, for example, want to have the parent company plus subsidiaries. Some of our clients are collecting it at the facility level and rolling it up. So you have the ability to do this, and we've really made this self-serving as it possibly can be. So you have the ability as a company to make sure that you're assigning various different subsidiaries or organization types, entities, geographies, facilities, etc. to various different people as well. So you are in full control of how your organization looks. I also mentioned earlier with regards to how broad this regulation is. Previously, before joining Novata, I spent just under a decade in pure ESG consultancy, and I know just how easy it is to lose things, lose documentation in emails. Somebody may have saved something in a personal drive and it's not easily accessible for everybody. We wanted to make sure that this solution is as collaborative as it possibly can be. So you can assign tasks to various different people throughout the course of using the platform, but also you can keep track of your planning and your timescales. So if, for example, you're in that process of mobilizing, you have an idea based on estimated timelines that we have from our clients, how long it's going to take you to do things like the double materiality assessment, the data point collection, EU Taxonomy assessment, and the preparation for the disclosure. One thing we haven't mentioned about the disclosure is the fact that it must be assured. So again, if that isn't a good enough reason for you to do a really good job and make sure that you're happy with the process that you've taken, it's really important to remember that your disclosure is also going to be audited and assured as well. So project management is a really important part of our platform, and the education side, as Beth mentioned, with the guidance for each of the different data points and the on-hand customer success team that you have as well. But we also wanted to make it educational with regards to the double materiality assessment. We wanted to make sure that we're digitizing this workflow so that if in the future you want to do your updates, you want to do your refreshes, then you have the ability to do that as a Novata client. With the double materiality assessment, once you've done your first one, it's best practice thereafter to at least do an update and a refresh and a review of everything on an annual basis. That doesn't mean that you have to do the full thing every single year. And it also doesn't mean that you have to go to a consultant every single year. We really wanted to make this a workflow that is easy and educational for you to use. So within the double materiality workflow, we have very clear methodology, and we have a breakdown of how you can interpret the results, as well as live chat, knowledge base articles, and email support along the way. Within the methodology, we've broken it down into steps. So earlier I mentioned the EFRAG double materiality guidance, and this is exactly what we have done. We've broken down the really complex language that is used in that guidance document into layman's terms so that you can complete each and every step of the EFRAG guidance that is recommended to do your double materiality assessment. This includes clear descriptions and guidance in the platform, in addition to knowledge base articles that we have. You can upload supporting evidence for each of the different sections, and you can also use this to start mapping your stakeholders. So one key part that you'll have to do as part of your double materiality assessment is understand who the affected stakeholders are and who the users of the sustainability statement are. This is a tool that helps you to map who they are and also their level of influence and whether you have decided that you're going to be engaging with them or not. So you can document all of your processes really transparently in here. So you have an audit trail and it's pretty much ready to go when it comes to that assurance process as well. In terms of the identification of impacts, risks, and opportunities, we do also have a stakeholder engagement section in here. So if you would like to do, for example, a survey, let's say your employees are deemed to be a high influence to your business and you want to engage with them, then you can conduct various different surveys with various different stakeholders, whether they be internal or external. And you have the ability to review all of the results and analyze them and slice the data as much as you would like to within the platform. Another aspect that you can do in terms of the identification of impacts, risks, and opportunities is document how you engage with those stakeholders that you'd mentioned on the previous step, but also you can start to document which of the topics your stakeholders have deemed to be material as part of that process. There's also a whole host of other ways in which you could start to document how you've identified material topics, such as looking through your due diligence processes or any existing risk management matrices that you may have. What you can also do within the platform is start to document your financial materiality thresholds. So here I've just put in a couple of examples, and here's a blank one for the impact materiality threshold. You can start to also assess and determine different impacts, risks, and opportunities. And it's as simple as following each of these different steps and choosing the topics, subtopics, or sub-subtopics. You can score them by scale, scope, irremediability, and likelihood. So just like you would do if you were following the EFRA guidance. And you can document any potential stakeholders that you've already identified throughout the process as being affected by these impacts, risks, and opportunities. Once you've done all of this, you'll have an overview of the different types of material topics, non-material, any impacts, risks, and opportunities considered, and how many stakeholder groups were engaged. And we have put all of this into a tabular format. I know traditionally with materiality assessments, you're very much used to seeing a matrix style way of presenting results. The latest EFRAG FAQ document actually states that they would prefer to see the results in a tabular format because again, it supports with standardization and it's also a lot easier to share with stakeholders and for them to interpret it how they need to. So everything would be documented in tables, and here is just an example of one that we filled in earlier. So with that, I know we have a lot of questions probably coming through. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now until we get to the questions. Perfect. Beth.
Kristen has been wonderful in asking questions. Thank you. I hope everyone else feels encouraged to ask questions. I was just answering one. Also, you might have received a poll that popped up. We'd love if you could take a moment to look at the poll, and then I'll dive into answering with Laura all the other open questions.
So if you would like to find out any more about the demo or the advisory pieces, then the poll that's just popped up there should give you the ability to opt in to find out more information from us. So Q&A, I cannot see my screen, Beth, so I'm going to lean on you with any questions that you can see.
Next open question is the Novata process auditor proof? So that's something we've been mindful from the beginning because people find the assurance aspect of this process quite concerning and overwhelming. So we've worked with assurance providers while developing the platform to enable it to be as auditor friendly as possible. So there's an assurance portal that allows them to have a specified view of the platform. So it makes their access to the data that you've collected, as well as the audit history of how it's been collected, easier, which means reducing the burden on them and reducing their time and ideally likely reducing the costs on the company themselves. We've also worked with them to ensure that we have everything that they would need. So like Laura showed you in the demo, we have a data repository, essentially a library that is tracking every single thing that you upload and making clear what it's uploaded against. And everything, again, as we showed, is auditable. So every time something has been edited, everyone that is involved, that is all being tracked actively through the platform so that auditors can go in and have a fulsome look at what's been done and can conduct all that's necessary through the platform. Or is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. We are also aware that EFRAG did not publish their final piece around how they want these disclosures to look until about 2 weeks ago. We at Novata have been part of the XBRL tagging consultation working groups to date, and so we're up to date in terms of what the reporting piece will look like, as well as working with assurers and also some legal partners to make sure that the process and the audit trail is really clear in the platform as well.
Awesome, thank you, Laura. The next question is, can you provide some pricing information? So I know that whenever I attend something like this, I always want an idea of pricing. And I hate when someone says it depends. I fear the answer here is though it depends. Laura, I don't know if you feel comfortable giving a range. We just don't want to misstate any expectations. So a lot of it depends on what the company wants and what their requirements are. So if it's a complex governance org structure with a ton of subsidiaries, and it depends on if those subsidiaries all do the same thing, or if there's a great variance in what their operations are, which changes the DMA as well, the data point collection. That affects the pricing, as well as how much handholding a company might want. Something that we've really been a critical part of how we've designed this tool is to empower companies to do as much as themselves as they would like and get as much support as they'd like. So if the first year you say, I just want someone to help me through every aspect of this, that is available to you. But of course, the pricing would reflect that. If after doing it once with the support of our advisory team, you say, I get this under control, in the future I can refresh my answers, I can go through this process on my own. That also is completely available to you. Laura, I don't know if there's any more concrete pricing information we could provide that would be helpful.
Yeah, so what we typically do with every company that we're talking to about this is do a scoping questionnaire at the beginning. So to Beth's point, depending on whether you just want the access to the platform, whether you want platform and advisory, whether you want to have the full education journey, whether you just want to start collecting data points, we really need to figure that out when we talk with every company. And to Beth's point, we also need kind of comfort from you in knowing that you know how you're going to be reporting, the reporting boundaries, that you've had the green light from your legal counsel as well, that you know how you're reporting, if it's at the parent level or the subsidiary level. So it really varies. But what I can tell you is for any investors that we may have on the webinar, we do offer a 20% discount on the tech and a 10% discount on advisory for any existing customers and also their portfolio companies as well.
So thank you, Laura. Next question I think is for you as well, Laura. Will you have climate scenario analysis?
Will I what, sorry?
Climate scenario analysis.
Yep, so climate scenario analysis is a complex one. We do offer that now as an offering within the advisory team. And that really is embedded in the ESRS E1 topic. So when Beth had all of the different environmental, social and governance topics on the screen, the scenario analysis piece fits within the climate change aspect. And that's really quite a very useful tool when it comes to understanding if it really is material to your business, because you're starting to test different physical and transitional risks and opportunities that could exist for the business against various different pathways that could occur within the future. So if you do want more information about that, then please do let us know, but it is certainly a useful tool that can be used to support that topical standard for climate change.
Okay, Laura, next question. Can Novata create stakeholder surveys?
Yes, we can create stakeholder surveys. So we have a template already available within the platform. If you were working with the advisory team, we would also help build these for you. And finally, you have the option to create custom templates in the survey builder as well, if you would prefer to just create your own from scratch.
And lastly, we have an easy one for you. In the end, I get an exportable report, right?
Yeah, so when it comes to the endpoint, there are two things that you'll need to do. So one, you'll need to submit your disclosure to the European Single Access Point, known as ESAP. So that is one thing that you will have to do. And we are in the process of building and searching out what that integration looks like for you to be able to do that within the Novata CSRD solution. And secondly, what you'll need to do is integrate your ESRS data points into your sustainability management statement. So for example, just like you may already have an annual report, You will integrate all of the ESRS data points into that. And with the Novata platform, once you have collected all of the relevant data points and you're happy with them, you can download them and input that into a report as you may need to.
How about tagging? Is there an integrated tool?
Yes, so we have metric tagging within the CSRD solution for you to see things like which are the mandatory or voluntary data points, but also tagging with regards to the XBRL tagging that I'd mentioned earlier, which is a mandatory part of the CSRD for those reporting in 2026 on 2025 data.
Those are all our questions. Does anyone have a question they didn't get a chance to ask that they'd like to either come off mute or put into the Q&A? We have 1 minute and we're willing to go up to the buzzer. No more questions coming in. We want to thank you all so much for joining us here today. As mentioned earlier, we will follow up with the slides. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly, beth.meyer@novata.com or laura.callaghan@novata.com. We're eager to help you. We have an active CSRD survey right now. I encourage you all to take a look. It's easy to access at that link right there, and you also have an access to the link when we send you the slides. This is being sent across the investment industry as well as private companies to get a greater view of how they're navigating it. What are their internal teams doing? How much are they spending on these products? What other providers are they using to get them through this process? And you'll have first look at all the answers if you participate. So we strongly encourage everyone to participate. And thank you for giving us 45 minutes of your day.
Thanks, everyone.